Hello, everyone. On today's podcast episode, I'm going to talk about the Antichrist again and atheists. So, you know, on this podcast, I've talked about atheism before. How it's illogical to be an atheist. Because it is impossible to prove that God doesn't exist. Right? I'm not the one saying it. That claim that it is impossible to prove that God doesn't exist. This is a claim that atheists say themselves. They say it is impossible to prove that God doesn't exist, right? But yet they also believe that God doesn't exist. So they believe in a contradictory thing, right? The belief is contradictory to the fact. Although God doesn't exist, they still believe that God doesn't exist. Although there's no proof that God doesn't exist, they still believe that God doesn't exist anyways, right? Even though there's proof that God doesn't exist. But let's talk about atheism and the Antichrist. What I figured out when reading the Bible, is that the Bible has a lot of symbolisms, and words also have a lot of hidden meanings. There are a lot of hidden meanings in words. For example, the word atheist means anti-theist, right? Or against theists. Do you know what the word theist means? The word theist means God's man. I've stated it before on earlier episodes, but if this is the first episode you're listening to, the word theist means God's man. The means God, and ist or ist means man. Here's an example of why, here's an example of what, the man in theist means. If you don't believe me when I say that theist means man, right? God's man. What do you call a biologist? What do you call someone who studied biology? A biologist, right? The gist, the ist in biologist means man. So another word for a biologist is what? A man who studies biology. Biology man. Someone who studies chemistry is called a what? A chemist. Ist. That ist means man. So chemist is what? Chemistry man. Someone who studies theology is called a what? A theologist. The ist in there means man. So theology or theologist means man who studies theology or theology man, right? So theist, which means a man who believes in a higher power or God, right? A man who believes in a higher power is a deist. And the word deist means God's man, right? So if the word deist means God's man, atheist means anti-God's man, right? For Christians, who do you call, who do we know as God's man or the man of God or the Son of God? Christ is the man of God. God's man directly indicates Christ. So the word deist also means man of God or son of God or Christ. So if the word deist directly implies Christ, right? Then what do you think the word atheist means? Atheist means anti-Christ, anti-man of God, anti-son of God. So when the Bible states that, during the end times, there will be antichrist, it also means what? There will be atheists. Why? Who has already betrayed God? Atheists. There's no proof that God doesn't exist, but they've already betrayed God and believe that God doesn't exist anyways. They've already decided upon themselves that God doesn't exist without any evidence that God doesn't exist. This is the basic definition of betrayal. They have betrayed God and believe that God doesn't exist. And that's what it states in the Bible. The Bible states that the Antichrist or the atheist will come from the church, and then at some point in time will betray God, will betray the church. Most atheists were once theists, and then at some point in time they did what? Betray God, betray the church, just like it states in the Bible. They betrayed the church without evidence that God doesn't exist. They still believe that God doesn't exist anyways. Many atheists mock religion. They mock God. They mock the Bible. They insult the Bible. They insult religious people for being religious. Because since they believe that God doesn't exist, everyone who believes that God, exists is an idiot. In their eyes, everyone who believes that God exists is an idiot, a stupid idiot. And God is a useless fool that doesn't exist. God is a worthless animal, a worthless creature that doesn't exist. That's the worldview of atheists. God is nothing to an atheist. There were once religious people who once worshiped God. And then at some point in time, they started looking down on God. They started treating gods and religious people as garbage, as, idiots, fools. Isn't this betrayal? Just like it states in the Bible, the Antichrist or the atheist will betray God. It will betray the church. And that's what atheists do on a daily basis. Even though there's proof that God exists, most atheists will never care about the truth. They will deny the proof that God exists. They will always deny the proof that God exists. Why? Because they're already closed-minded. They're not waiting for evidence to, before they decide that God doesn't exist. They've already decided that God doesn't exist without evidence. They've already made up their mind that God doesn't exist. Even though there's no evidence to prove that God doesn't exist in their eyes, they'll rather just accept that God doesn't exist anyways and just betray God. This is the mindset of an atheist. It goes lockstep. The behavior of an atheist was written right there in the Bible. Anti-theist, anti-God's man, anti-man of God, anti-son of God, anti-Christ. Just like it states in the Bible, the Antichrist will betray God. It will betray the church. All atheists have betrayed God. They have betrayed the church. Just like it states in the Bible. It is easy to prove that God exists. I can prove that God exists within a few minutes. God is omnipresent and God is intelligent. God created the world out of his own intelligent body. So in order to find proof that the world, God exists, we must find proof that the world around you is intelligent, right? Because God is intelligent and omnipresent, right? And God is the one controlling the world as we speak. The world around you is intelligent. One, quantum physicists have already shown that the world knows when it's being watched. The world reacts to humans, to our behavior, as if it's intelligent. The world knows when it's being watched. That should tell you, it implies intelligence. There's a basic intelligence there that knows when it's being watched or not, that knows when it's being monitored or not. That's one evidence right there. The second evidence is that we humans are made up of atoms, right? If you say humans are intelligent, you're directly stating that atoms are intelligent, because humans and atoms are synonymous. So if atoms are intelligent, and this entire world is covered by intelligent atoms, doesn't that directly state that the world is intelligent? The world is covered by the same atoms that a human body is covered in. One atom and another atom, there are barely any differences between the makeup of it. The only thing that changes is the amount of protons and electrons inside an atom. One proton in one atom is no different from another proton in another atom. One electron in one atom is no different from another electron in another atom. If the electrons in our body are intelligent, the electrons all over the world are intelligent. Humans are intelligent. Humans are electrons. that means electrons are intelligent. If humans are intelligent and humans are electrons, it means electrons are intelligent. If humans are intelligent and humans are atoms, it means atoms are intelligent. By default, it is that easy to prove that God exists. The entire world is covered by intelligence. There are intelligent atoms all over the world. All the energies of this world is intelligent. Just like it states in the Bible, the entire world is one large intelligent body called God. God created this body out of his own body. The world was created out of God's body, God's intelligent body. And everything around you is intelligent, just like it states in the Bible. God is watching everything we do. And quantum physics shows that, the world knows when it's being watched because God is always watching us. God is always watching us because God is the world around us. This is how easy it is to prove that God exists. But do you know why an atheist will never accept that God exists? Because they've already accepted that God doesn't exist without evidence. They already believe that God, there's no proof that God doesn't exist, but yet they still accept it anyways. They've already betrayed God a long time ago, so nothing you do will ever change their mind. This is the problem with atheism, is that they're already closed-minded. They're already the Antichrist, so nothing you do will ever change their mind. The only person that can ever change the mind of an Antichrist is God himself. The only person that could ever change the mind of an atheist is God himself. They will never listen to evidence. Evidence means nothing to an Antichrist. Evidence means nothing to an atheist. There's no difference between the two people. They've already betrayed God already. So evidence no longer matters. The only person that can truly change the heart of an Antichrist or an atheist is what? God himself. This is how life works. In the Bible, it states that there'll be many Antichrists, not just one. There'll be many atheists, not just one. So that's it for today's podcast episode. I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.